Hello everyone, and welcome again on the Sunset Safari. My name is Scott, for those of you who may be joining for the first time. And haven't we got off to a great start? We bumped into a small herd of elephants, and Gendre is responsible for filming these elephants this afternoon. And the other team heading out is James and Viam. They're going to be doing a few tests this afternoon over on Arathusa. We've been having some trouble with our radios over there, but they will be joining in on the safari as well, but we'll be doing some tests, so we'll be quite busy, so you'll probably be stuck with me for a lot of the afternoon. But thankfully we've got some great prospects on our way to actually go and follow up on the 5 Birmingham boys this afternoon. 5 big male lions. Well, they're not as big as they could be, but they certainly are getting there, and they're coming into this area trying to overthrow the current dominant males, which are 2 males that are very big manes, and they called them timber males. Anyway, there are 5 male lions not far from here, but before we could get to them, we bumped into these elephants, and we're very close to the Djuma Waterhole. So we figured that it may be worth spending some time with them, because if and when they arrive at the Waterhole on this hot afternoon, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of mud thrown around and a lot of drinking. So that's something to look forward to, and the lions in all likelihood will be fast asleep. Now, we have got another WildEarth member that's just joined the team from Johannesburg today, and let me reiterate, they haven't joined the team, they've just come up to the bush, and that's Louise, and she's in the final control room with Tara and Nikki, and she'll be learning the ropes of how to direct. So that's a new team member that's up in the field, which is great to have her here. And when I said it's a hot afternoon, it's about 31 degrees Celsius, 88 degrees Fahrenheit, and because of these temperatures, I'm expecting the lions to still be asleep for quite some time. We will certainly go there as soon as we've finished enjoying the sighting of the elephants, because I'm sure a lot of you would like to see them, and I know there are a lot of unanswered questions about these males. So we're trying to get through all of them, and a lot of them will not be able to be answered necessarily by us, but we'll certainly be able to speculate as to what may happen in the coming months with these 5 males. Okay, now one more thing, especially if you're a first-time viewer, this is a live safari. So it's happening this very second, and we would love you to contribute and interact with us and be involved heavily in the safari. And to do that, it's very simple. You can send us through your questions, thoughts and comments, and to do so either you hashtag Safari Live on Twitter, or send an email through to questions@wildearth.tv. Now that's for the new viewers. For the older viewers, you may have recognized this elephant we're looking at. Well, both of these elephants. It's not the best view so far, but it's very thick bush here, so we've battled to get in front of them. But the large individual on the right is a female, and she's got a short trunk, and it was sadly probably lost the end part of it due to a snare, which is a wire noose or cable, which is used by poachers, and it indiscriminately latches onto any animal that moves through its path. In this case it was the elephant's trunk that got caught, but thankfully it hasn't affected her too severely. She has lost her prehensile fingertip, and once we do get in front of her, it is something that you'll clearly notice. She's still healthy and just basically can't feed quite as easily as other ellies. One thing we can see quite well from this angle is that they are fairly often flapping their ears, both the mother and the smaller calf. And elephants will flap their ears not to fan their body necessarily, but to help cool the blood, which is pumped through their ears through a very intricate network of veins and arteries, and this helps to keep the elephants cool. So they've got a very great thermoregulatory device which allows them to feed almost constantly through the heat of the day. And this is important for elephant because they need to acquire very large amounts of vegetation every day. They don't have the most efficient digestive system, and food often passes through just about the same way it went in. I'm going to ask Gendre to see if he can show you another animal that's flying around above us. It seems like it could be here for long enough for him to get to. And it's a vulture riding a thermal. It's one of my favorite things to watch. I find it so peaceful and relaxing watching birds of prey soaring above us. And often wonder what the view is like from up there. This is a white-backed vulture, and I'm guessing it may have been one of the vultures that was feeding on the remains of a buffalo carcass killed by the Birmingham males, the 5 male lions we are going to be taking a closer look at a little bit later on. And it probably spent a day or two in this area digesting all of the meat and lightening its cargo slightly in order for it to be able to fly off. So I don't think we have to be concerned that there may be a kill below it. And often when vultures do see a kill, they won't circle above it, they'll plummet down, and you'll see vultures from far and wide all descending into the same direction. Now, eddies have moved off a little bit too far for us to film them, so we are going to reposition and loop around towards the Juma Waterhole. They are moving quite slowly though, so it may be a while until they get there, but what we may see is that when they do get a little bit closer, the thought of quenching their thirst and having a mud bath may get them excited, and we may see them pick up the speed a little bit. For now, I think our best bet may to be heading up onto the dam wall, where if you're interested, you'll be able to actually take a look at us on the Juma Waterhole camera, which is a live camera 24 hours a day that is controlled by people called zoomies who have access to the controls and point the camera in different directions. So if you are a new viewer and would like to get an idea of what our vehicle looks like from a side profile or from a different view, and get to see Jean-Andre, the cameraman, who actually has his sleeves rolled up on his t-shirt, so you may get lucky with a bit of extra flesh there. We just pulled one down though, so maybe not. Anyway, it's just off to our right, and it is a great way for you to be able to immerse yourself in nature when our safaris aren't running. Now, this is a good example of how our plans are sometimes not very effective because the animals don't do what we are hoping them to do. And I was hoping that we would have a view of the elephants from up here, but there is no sign of them. So maybe what we can do is shoot off to the lion, and when the elephants do actually arrive here, you guys can let us know. And if there's some good action, we will rush back, because at the moment I'm kind of torn as to whether to wait here. Oh, they went off the damn wall. It'll take a little bit long for them to us, and the bush is very thick, so we're not going to be able to get any decent views of them on their way here. I've just heard one of the other game drive vehicles getting mobile, heading out on his afternoon safari, and what we're going to do is just have a quick chat to him and update him on what's going on, and it's vital for us to communicate with the other guides. Afternoon, Craig. There's a champagne glove, small one as far as I'm aware, heading in the Mulwati up to the Vuatila Dam, about 100 on street. Well, surprise, surprise, there's another elephant that's arrived, and it is in the perfect spot for us to view it. So there were a few more than I had expected. This one's got very distinctive tusks, which you'll notice kind of bend outwards more than normal. And it's a young bull, probably around 15 years of age as a rough guess. And it does actually look quite similar to a bull that we saw at the Waterhole yesterday afternoon. We enjoyed a wonderful sighting there at the same Waterhole that they're heading towards now. You may have noticed he just lifted up his trunk and pointed it towards us. He made it again, smelling us. I'm not sure, Jean usually carries some fruit on the vehicle, so I'm not sure if there's a banana that may catch this elephant's attention. Something certainly has. You've noticed how he's turned around. What can you sense here? You may notice a slight bit of moisture leaking down a temporal gland just behind his eye. Difficult to say exactly why that may be seeping, but it is a good indicator to keep an eye on with elephant, because it can indicate that they are emotionally heightened, be it happy or sad or anxious. Or for bigger and older bulls, they could be in a sexually heightened stage called must. What are you thinking about, mister? What are you so unsure of? Oh, maybe it's this other bull that's just approaching from behind him. And this bull's coming in. Oh, here we go. What is going on here, boys? No ways. Look at this. Oh, apologies, it wasn't another bull. It was the mother with the sawn-off trunk. And I'm guessing that maybe she's coming into season, and this young bull's been pestering her. And maybe that's what he was smelling. The sweet smell of a female who is looking for love, just sadly not with him in this case. And wasn't that wonderful to see? Girl power. She showed that young boy a serious lesson there, and he didn't even think twice. As soon as he saw it coming, he headed for the hills. What a pleasant surprise. And interestingly enough, now the calf's youngest calf, the female's youngest calf, also a young bull, is coming to back up his mother. I'm joking. It's probably not that he's coming to back her up. It's more likely that he's just missing her presence. They form incredibly strong bonds with their mothers, and probably just wondering where she's headed off to. It's been really interesting watching this young calf that we can see, because when we first started viewing him and his older sibling and his mother, it was probably about 4 or 5 months ago, and it was obviously just at the stage that he was being weaned. And throughout the day and the night, we could hear him trumpeting all around Juma, begging her for milk, literally screaming and crying out to her, and she wasn't having any of it. But now he's stopped his whining and complaining, and the weaning process is probably over. I'm thinking now we're going to be able to get a great view of her short trunk as she comes back to us. And Lynn on Twitter has mentioned, isn't it wonderful how she has managed to actually adapt to use her shortened trunk that also lacks that prehensile fingertip, which allows them to pick up tiny things as small as a peanut, which interestingly enough the Indian elephants lack. They don't have that prehensile fingertip. And you're completely right, Lynn. We can learn so much from wild animals, they're incredibly resilient, and you can often see animals with what may appear to be a fatal injury, that they, over time, work their way through it, the injury will heal, and they will just make a plan to carry on surviving. And this female elephant is no different. Not only is she surviving, but she's successfully raising young while she goes about it. What I'm hoping is that a really big elephant bull also gets wind of the fact that she could well be coming into season, which is just a guess at this stage. And that's why this young bull would be pestering her. But wouldn't it be wonderful to not only see a big bull, but to see the elephants mating? It's something that I've only seen once, and it is a mind-boggling spectacle to witness. It's kind of like a double-story house making love. Once the bull mounts the female, he is so much higher than her, and often so much bigger than her, you wonder how she can support his weight. But it is something I've only seen once. And Lynn has also just pointed out another good fact about this elephant and her two calves. There should be a third one, and the third one I did see earlier, Lynn, so it is here. It's just below us in the riverbed. So not to fear, the family is still here and happy. The interesting thing about this family is that there are often just the three of them, and that's quite abnormal for elephants. Usually females will join up with other females and live in a herd of varying sizes, but you very, very seldom will just see one female with her offspring. Occasionally we see her joining up with other herds, but the majority of the time it's just this youngster, the smallest calf of hers, as well as a slightly older one, and herself. And looking at the size of this calf, it's probably around 4 years of age, as a rough guess. Very difficult to age the animals out here. And what's important about that rough estimate of this calf's age is that elephants will, depending on the area, give birth about every 3 to 4 years. So it certainly does match up with this calf's size, the fact that she could be coming into season. I initially just assumed that it was the slightly older calf of hers that was chasing away that other young bull, but I was quickly corrected by Nikki in Final Control, who noticed it was the mother. And now you can see that shortened trunk. It would probably be about 6 inches longer, and if it does ever face us, it'll look like 2 barrels of a shotgun, whereas an elephant with a normal trunk, you won't clearly see both individual nostrils. So, interesting question through from George in Florida, who has just asked, what is the likelihood of those 5 male lions having a crack at catching one of these elephants? And it's, look at how awesome this is, they're all lined up in perfect size. Sorry, George. There is a chance that that could happen, and in certain areas it has been documented that not only male lions, but large prides of lioness, sometimes 30 strong, will actively hunt elephants, and not just the babies, some fairly large sub-adult elephants. But in this area it's very, very rare, but that's not to say it could not happen. And you may notice the elephants are walking on quite a prominent pathway, and we call these game paths, and often around the water holes or leading into the waterholes, these game trails or game paths will become prominent. And they are just highways that the animals like to use for easy transport from A to B without having to crash through bushes. This is such a wonderful view of them. Oh, we can see the trunk of the other bull just on the left of the screen. He's scraping it up against a marula tree there. The very same marula tree that we viewed the quarantine male leopard in, and that leopard was lying up just on that branch over there a few months ago. So some interesting history behind that marula tree. Now, I mentioned the Juma Waterhole camera earlier, and within the next few seconds all these elephants are going to pop into view there. And a few seconds after them we're also going to pop into view. I'm interested to see what may happen with this bull that's trailing along here, and whether he's going to get chased around by the female again. We're just going to try and dip down below them and wait for them at the water's edge. They may actually bypass this waterhole and go up to another one not far away from here, so that is a possibility, but I'm guessing they are going to come here. Just got a question through from a name I haven't heard in a while. Trent, in Fiji, where have you been hiding? I hope you have a very good excuse for not sending through questions recently, but it is good to know you're watching again. And Trent would like to know where and what was the biggest elephant I've ever seen. I've seen some massive bulls in the Kruger National Park. North of here is where there's quite a few large tuskers whose tusks just about touch the ground, and quite often with big elephant bulls who are termed tuskers with really massive ivory, their tusks can quite often get so long that they eventually snap off, which is obviously really sad, and then you'll have an elephant with one massive tusk and then one broken off, and then eventually often the second one will break off too. That is if the poachers don't get them first. But certainly some of the biggest elephant bulls in my life have been in the Kruger National Park, as well as an area in Kenya where I spent some time just north of Mount Kilimanjaro, close to a wonderful ecosystem called Amboseli, which is renowned for wonderful photographs of elephants walking through massive open salt pans with pictures of Kilimanjaro and the little snow cap in the background. And I was just close to that area in an area called the Chulu Hills, basically between Amboseli and Tsavo, another very well-known wilderness area in Kenya. And there was a lot of big elephant bulls that used to come to the waterhole in front of the lodge there. So that's where I've seen some of my biggest ones. Sadly, the Sabi Sands is not renowned for seeing big elephant bulls, and I'm not too sure why. Just gonna stop here. It looks like they are going to head straight past this waterhole, but they may change direction at any point. Oh, she just kicked her stomach there. Obviously she had something biting her or something a little bit itchy. You may have noticed that mid-stride. Look at her shaking that head of hers. Is she going to chase the bull that's leading them, or the same one she chased earlier? No. Well, another prime example of how we often get the predictions completely wrong. And the elephants have obviously quenched their thirst quite recently and therefore are not compelled to stop here for a drink. And they do certainly know that probably a half a mile from here is their next waterhole, and they are heading straight in that direction. So I'm thinking we could possibly leave them now and then head off to go and see if the male lions are still in the same place. And thereafter, once we have had a look at them and determined what their mood is and what their likelihood of getting active is, we will make our next plan. Or maybe we can loop ahead of them one more time and just enjoy one last view of them before they do disappear into some thick bush in the riverbed that feeds the Juma Waterhole behind us. Another very plausible theory that I did not think about is that maybe this older bull has been bullying this elephant's calves, and that's why she chased him off earlier. So that's something for us to all think about. And another question from Lynn. She's wondering if I have got any idea as to, or speculation as to, why she doesn't hang around with other elephants as most females would typically do. And Lynn, I don't have a clue. I've thought possibly because of her slightly different trunk, she may be ostracized or bullied, but it's highly, highly unlikely that elephants would pick on another one simply because she's got a slightly shorter trunk. I think they're a lot more friendly than that usually, and are often very caring for other members of the herd. So, difficult to say, and that is the only kind of theory that I can think of. Other than that, I thought maybe it's the youngsters that cause trouble within the herds, but whenever we have seen them joined up with other herds, the youngsters seem to get along very well, so it's not like she's catering specifically for her youngsters' needs. And maybe she is just, you know, has a very different personality to most other elephants and is happier alone with her family. Now, isn't it wonderful how all of you can help us piece the puzzle which is this African wilderness together? And we've just got a message through from Donna, who was obviously watching the Waterhole camera earlier, and she saw these elephants taking a drink. So that will explain why they aren't taking a drink now. They were here not so long ago. So thank you very much, Donna. And I really love the way you guys support us and help us by feeding us all this information that we would otherwise have no idea about. And it really does help all of us to get a better idea and understanding of why these animals do what they do. There's a lot that is unknown about wild animals, even if they are heavily researched, and a lot of that is because of the fact that, just like humans, animals have their own individual personalities and traits, and that could be the reason why, like I said, this female simply doesn't like hanging around with the herd. There's not much that she has to be cautious of out here. There's not many prey animals, so she's not getting any major benefits of being on the herd all the time. And maybe she just likes moving more slowly at her own pace. And maybe it's the fact that her trunk is slightly shorter, which means it does take her slightly longer to feed, that causes her to do her own thing. You may have seen a little black bird fly through the screen there. That was a fork-tailed drongo. There it is sitting up in the tree. And if any of you were on the sunrise safari, we had an awesome sighting of one of these birds following the vehicle. And just like it's following the elephants now, it was feeding on insects that we were flushing up as we drove past. Earlier we were discussing elephant tuskers and how the big bull's tusks will occasionally break off. And Jimmelin in Oklahoma asks an interesting question. She's interested to know if you stumble across a piece of ivory in the bush, is it yours to keep? And no, it isn't. It does depend on the country you're in, but usually how it works is it will be owned by the landowner of wherever that tusk is found. But there's a very stringent policy and a lot of paperwork that goes behind having permission to hold ivory. As Jimmelin, if you are found with a tusk in your bag when you're on your way back to Oklahoma from a safari, you will find yourself in deep trouble. So technically no, it won't, and a lot of ivory is stockpiled by the government in warehouses, and that way it prevents the free flow and trade of the ivory, or at least it's an attempt to. Look at all those veins behind the ears there, and they can pump liters and liters of blood through those veins and arteries every minute, as we discussed a little bit earlier, and that's why she's flapping them. Those large ears actually make up 20% of the surface area of the elephant's body, which when I first heard that fact I was like, no ways, that's impossible. But it's double-sided and there's two of them, and when you think about it, it actually is very plausible. What you'll see is there's a tiny little ear hole kind of on the top part of her ear, not behind but in front. And as you can see, the shape of the elephant's ear, it's not like ours or like most animals that's like a satellite to help absorb audio coming in. It is, so it's therefore, these ears aren't to aid in hearing, it's purely for thermoregulation. And they always also have that tiny little flap on the top back parts of their ear, so that also increases the surface area ever so slightly. And another interesting thing about this big female and her ears is that she's got a very distinctive notch on the right ear. It's not a notch, it's actually kind of like a bulge. It's a funny little bump. And I'm pretty certain it's her right ear because I can't see it very clearly on her left ear now. And that was pointed out to us by Gerda a few drives ago. So despite her trunk being shorter, she's also got a very distinctive bump on her right ear, which can be used to identify her. And for those of you who are new to the safari experience, we really do enjoy getting to know the different characters as much as we can, and therefore very small marks or tears or scratches or scars can often be the defining characteristics that help us work out who is who. And it is really wonderful how we get to know the behavior of these animals, just like watching this young calf going through the weaning period when it used to scream and complain throughout the day and night. You could hear this calf somewhere on Juma complaining, and some of you would have remembered that and got to see that, but now it's grown up and moved past that stage of its life. Well, there's another elephant bull that's just arrived on the scene. Now this is going to be interesting. And while we wait to see what happens here, because I'm guessing he's going to show interest in this female, we've got an update through from Dorf in Pittsburgh, and thanks very much for your updates. Apparently yesterday this same family of elephant was seen at this waterhole behind us, and an elephant bull was giving the calf trouble, or the calves trouble, and what the female did was let out a loud trumpet and chase the bull away. Watch closely here. He's going to put his trunk behind her back legs, I'm fairly certain, and smell. Yes. We can't see clearly, but he is sniffing very intently, and this will explain why the other bull was chased off by her. He's probably been a little bit too forceful in his approach. These bulls are far too young, but I'm interested to see now that, or far too young to be wanting to mate with her. It's just their natural instinct kicking in, hoping to get lucky. But let's watch and see what happens here, because if he continues to pester her, she probably will chase him off. But all seems calm and peaceful, so strange behavior. Always great to hear that there's a new viewer watching. Hello Ella, and good to have you on the safari with us. Ella's interested to know, is the elephant part of the Big Five? And you're spot on. It's a good start to your Safari Live experience, and you've, like I said, nailed it. The elephant do make up part of the Big Five. It's them, the rhinoceros, the buffalo, the Cape buffalo, leopard and lion. And all five of those animals do occur in the area that we're working in. However, we do not show rhino, as we do not want to ever disclose their location, because the rhino poaching at the moment is catastrophic, and we don't want to in any way aid poachers in knowing the whereabouts of rhino. So that's the one animal that we sadly won't be able to show you out of the Big Five. There's another one we'll be able to show you later. There's 5 big male lions waiting not too far from here for us. And we are also extremely privileged in the amount of leopard sightings that we get, as well as Cape buffalo. And even though the Big Five are very well known and famous for various different reasons, there's a lot of other wonderful, small and weird and wonderful creatures that you'll also get to know whilst on safari with us. So that's something that you can look forward to experiencing. And Ella, what we love knowing is not only that new viewers are watching, but where in the world you are from. So please feel free to let us know, and to any of the other new viewers who are sending through questions, like I said, just let us know which city or country you're in, because it's wonderful for us to get an idea in our head where we're talking to people, or whereabout you are when we're talking to you, you've got a good idea of what we look like and where we are, but we've got nothing to go on. So it is quite nice to try and get an idea of you sitting up late at night watching the safari, or if you've woken up at an absurd hour in the morning. So let us know all those little facts. You may wonder why there's a small fence post to the left of the screen, and that's a fence that keeps the Djuma guests safe at night. Not all camps in Africa will have fences around them, but here at Djuma the camp is fenced, and it's for a couple of reasons. From a safety perspective, it obviously makes it safer if the wild animals cannot easily move through the camp. Having said that though, I have seen leopard quite easily sneak under this fence. But the gardens are also manicured and quite beautiful, and if these elephants were allowed in there, they would undo all the hard work in the garden. A very tranquil afternoon. The temperature's cooling down quite considerably, and that's good for not only us, more comfortable for the humans, but it does also make it more comfortable for the animals. And the more comfortable they are, the more inclined they are to move around. Elephants are different, and that's why we've got off to such a great start by being able to view them. The lion that we're hoping to spend some time with a little bit later will in all likelihood be fast asleep, and unless a Cape buffalo or some other prey item came running past them, they're probably going to stay that way for about another hour, I'm guessing. Now, I've just been stumped by Umang, and Umang has asked, why do Indian elephants have smaller ears than the African elephants? Because it is hotter in India. Now, I know it is very hot in India, Umang, but not necessarily much hotter than Africa. So that will be my only debate. But even if the temperatures are exactly the same, or India is hotter, the bottom line is their ears are much smaller. And I'm not too sure what could be the reason for that. Possibly the terrain and vegetation that they find themselves in is more shady, or they may not have to travel as far as African elephants for food. So that may have a big role in the need for them to be able to feed throughout the day and therefore thermoregulate themselves. But if anybody does know the exact reason or hypothesis as to why the Indian elephant has a smaller ear than the African and still can manage in the hot climate that it lives in, please feel free to share it with me, and that way we can help not only myself but also Umang get to the bottom of this. Good question though, and it's great to be stumped, because then it does allow us to all learn together on this safari experience. So we've already had a comment through from Lady Macbeth, and she's mentioned that maybe because they live in the jungle, it's a little bit cooler, and I did say that maybe it's slightly more shady. Even though it is humid in India, we have also just got some reports through saying that on average it is also typically cooler there. So we are kind of getting to the bottom of this, Umang. And the fact that India is slightly cooler may be the answer all in itself right there. I love the way elephant calves always stay so close to their mothers. It won't be like that forever, but up to about this age, and maybe for about another year until the next calf is born. Well, it will only be 22 months if she still needs to mate, if she is in fact in season, but probably when the next calf is born, she will make way for the new calf to sidle up to the mother. But they do form incredible bonds, and apparently do have incredible memories. So it's not just a theory or a myth, the saying that's quite often used, which is a memory like an elephant. They do have incredible memories, and these memories, along with the bonds that they forge, makes them very interesting animals. Now, I've just spotted a bird that I would like to show Ella along with all of you, because it's a bird that we don't very often get to see, and it's not only about the biggest of the animals here in Africa, but also some of the smaller ones. And you wouldn't believe it, but on cue, the little Natal Franklin that I was hoping to show you ran off a little bit further, but it's still close enough for you to appreciate its pretty colors and feathers. Look at that. Watch closely on its head how from time to time it will flare up its crest. Oh, it did it there, but it was facing us, so it was hard to see. It can just go instant afro. There we go, depending on its mood. And isn't that a pretty bird? Very chicken-like, as you can see. Now this looks like a male to me, and I can tell that because he's got very, very large spurs coming out the back of his legs. Interestingly, the one on his right leg doesn't appear to be there. Oh no, there it is. It's just not as visible as the one on his left leg, and those will be used for fighting with other males. Look at how pretty all of those feathers are on its neck. Now it's probably feeding, just like chickens, on a combination of vegetable matter as well as seed matter. And it's digging through the sand here. It'll probably also use its feet from time to time to ruffle up the earth, looking for little snacks. The speed at which they do it, it's very difficult to tell what they are actually feeding on a lot of the time. But it's going to be on one of the things that I've just mentioned. It's coming so nice and close to us here. It might even get to a point where Jean-Andre won't be able to film it anymore. Well, very happy to hear that Ella has sent through her home country to us, and she is from England. I hope the weather's good and all is well over there. It's been quite some time since I've been to England, so maybe I need to plan a trip across there soon. I'm not sure why it got a fright, but it just shot off at a rapid rate. Well, a very big thanks to Pretty Nightmare in Dallas, as well as Diane, for doing some more research to confirm that it is in fact cooler in India, even though it is more humid there. That environment is suited to the Indian elephant's slightly smaller ears, as it's not quite as harsh in India as here, and that's why our African elephants need the bigger ears. So Mang, we've got to the bottom of that, and what I think we're going to do is maybe let Jean-Ray show you one last view. It's quite a pretty scene of them all disappearing off into the thick vegetation here. Whoops, not the best view, but it is natural what we are seeing here, and it happens about every half an hour to 45 minutes. They usually pop out 3 or 4 of these 2 kilogram, 4 pound boluses of vegetation, and just as quickly as it's going in, obviously it needs to be coming out to make space for more food. And another big thank you to Raisa, as well as I think Diane, who have mentioned that Brent and James have both also speculated, as I said earlier, that the reason why this female with the short trunk doesn't move with the larger herds is because she doesn't feed as quickly. So that's a good plausible theory. Well, it's been a wonderful start to the Sunset Safari, and it's been great having you on board with Jean-Ray and myself. But now it's time for you to jump on board to another vehicle, and I'm sure James is ready to entertain you. He's a great guy if you haven't met him. Enjoy. He's going to give you an update on how his afternoon's been, and we are going to head off to the Lion, so that's hopefully where you'll see us next. See you later.
Hello everybody, welcome to Jigger. I know it's been a while that you've been with Scott, but that's probably a good thing. I believe he's had a wonderful elephant sighting. We have been across to Aratuza to see what's going on there. Not a lot, as it would seem, but I can report that there was sign of Shadow and now Madiba, her son, aka Nelson Mandela. They are on Aratuza together, it would seem. Tracks are there, but no success. So they are absolutely fine, and I know there was a lot of concern about whether Shadow would come back to, excuse me, killing the flies. A lot of concern about whether Shadow would come back to her son, which she has indeed. Whether she's pregnant or not, well, that remains to be seen, and that's going to be very interesting going forward. So they are fine, and apparently officially today, I think it was probably a few days ago, but now we definitely know that Sindile, the name, is out the window, and Madiba is the new name. And that was named by Sean and Rivos, and Sean and Rivos were the first people to find Sindile when he was a little boy, before he now became named after Africa's greatest son, Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela. And Madiba, of course, is a praise name from his clan. Now, you may see the slightest distress on my face. We followed the Birmingham lions the whole morning. We eventually found them, but we followed some other lions into this area, and I'm not convinced that those Birmingham lions that we found late this morning are the same ones that were around here. When I last was on screen, that was with Scott on foot here, and I'm not convinced that the lions that we were following are the same ones that the Birminghams are the Birminghams. It means they would have done an extremely odd sort of oval circle through the property, which doesn't make any sense to me. We heard them calling far to the west today, at least to the east. So why they would have done a circle like that doesn't make any sense. But let's face it, they've done a lot of strange things over the last little while that don't necessarily make any sense. So it's possible. I'm just going to check in this area and see if we can't find a few tracks. I did find one female lion track, which is interesting. Now, just before we do that, just to keep you updated, one of the Matimba males was found on Mala Mala today, and he did injure a Styx female the other day. In fact, yesterday. He went and finished the job this morning. So that Styx female, the 2.5-year-old female, is now dead, killed by Hairy Belly the Matimba. The explanation for this to me is unclear. I've read that perhaps it's because she is not ready to mate yet. She's 2.5 years old. She's ready to mate. I've never heard of that being. It makes absolutely no evolutionary sense at all that a male lion would kill a female simply because she's not in a state to mate. She was, to me, looking very sick, very emaciated, perhaps had TB, and perhaps the sickness in her, combined with the aggression from the Matimba because he's under such pressure, made him attack her. I don't know. I don't buy it I don't buy at all the fact that he would have killed her because she wasn't at the right age to mate. I don't think that that's viable, especially as she was 2.5. Anyway, it's all rather interesting. And we are going towards, Scott is going towards the Birmingham males, so we'll see what he finds there, and we can answer some more questions on them and see what happens there. So what we're going to do is turn around and we're going to head up basically parallel with our far western boundary and see if we can't pick up further tracks of the lions that I think we were tracking at the end of the morning before I managed to find the Birmingham boys. And when I found the Birmingham boys, it was purely by luck. I was doing a camera test, I drove up a random road, and there they were. So it wasn't any skill on my part that caused me to find them. And their tracks don't go from here to there. So it's all rather a mystery, it's all rather frustrating, but most of all, it's all rather fascinating. And by the way, I know we did our introduction a little bit later than we normally do today. We have Viam on camera today. Viam is dressed in spanky new, sort of very impressive bush clothing, really. Yes, but they're clean today and freshly pressed. You look very smart, Viam. I'm paying you a compliment. So yesterday I was severely injured by a knobthorn. Liam, can you see my injury there? There it is. Look at that severe injury. Thank you, Lady Macbeth, for checking on that. My arm is sore, but I have a further injury to show you. Please observe my leg. Now, the first thing you'll notice about my leg is that there's not a huge amount of flesh on it. There's not a lot to it. And that injury there was a pile of wood by the fire last night that snuck up upon me and attacked me on the bottom of my insubstantial plover's leg. And it was deeply painful. I feel very much like I have been in the wars. Anyway, naturally, despite the fact that all of our crew have got first aid training, in fact 6 of them, including my illustrious cameraman here, have just done first aid training, none of them acquiesced to help me. None of them offered to offer me any kind of assistance. Nobody tore the shirt off their back to bandage my injuries. So I'm feeling a little bit, I'm feeling a little sorry for myself. Viam, would you like to offer an explanation for why you didn't help me last night?
I told you no.
Yes. Anyway, there it is, Lady Macbeth. Thank you for your concern. So this is not, I'm going to say something here that's perhaps not going to be that popular, but this is not my favorite part of the reserve at this time of year. And that's because it is a sodic area. And so what it is, it's largely filled with sort of salty soils. And just about the only green tree here at any stage is the magic worry. And that's the only greenery that you can see around here. The bush gets rather thick, and they're just not particularly beautiful trees at this time of the year here. In summer it'll be a bit different. It's always got kind of it's got a washed out feel about it, I feel, this area. But we're just looking to see if that female lion track I saw didn't come up here, maybe. Not a huge amount of point in following it on foot too closely, because it was from early this morning. So I mean, the lions could be anywhere by this stage. An impala Viam disappearing into the bush. We can't worry too much about it. Shall I try and get us a view? There's some more Viam, that's even better. And what I want to just quickly show you is there are some impala there, of course, but if you keep panning to the right there, look at that. In the middle of your screen now is an enormous community nest spider's web. See that? That's huge. And it seems to be hanging rather than, yeah, I think that's probably been pushed there by the elephants when they destroyed that tree. And in there are a whole lot of little spiders. If you're an arachnophobe, putting your hand into that nest would be a extremely bad idea. It would result in cardiac arrest quite fast, I imagine. Alright, let's carry on. These impala are now enjoying the sodic area, because the grasses here are much richer than they would be on any other area, because the soils are richer, to the point of toxicity sometimes for the plants. Lovely smell in the air. I saw my first knobthorn today with flowers on it, and I'm sure they're all going to start flowering very soon. Very appropriate that I should have seen that on the 1st of spring, just near our camp, so I wasn't on drive. You smell that, Viam? I believe that's to be ossimum that I can smell, or wild aniseed. Don't see any further lion tracks here. A loss and a lock. Oh, some wildebeest. Right. Now, we're going to look at these wildebeest, and while we do that, I'm going to thank Gracie, aged 8 in Iowa. Gracie, you say that you will give me a Superman bandage for my leg. Well, I think that's very kind of you. Thank you, Gracie. And I'm going to tell Viam that that is how he should treat me the next time I become attacked by a piece of firewood. Yeah? Superman bandages, please. You will go and buy them next time you're in town.
Come on, Joe. You know you cry wolf.
So those are 2 wildebeest. There used to be 3 in this area. There's a bull, definitely, and a cow there. Where we are, and the soil types and that sort of thing. Wildebeest like this area because it's open. An ocean in Oregon, you want to know, is the sand that you can see, was it once an ocean? Ocean it was once an Hello everybody, welcome back to Jigger. Sorry about the lack of signal. If you do lose us again, it's because this is just a dodgy area. I don't know what happened before. Possibly an alien spacecraft has hijacked one of our satellites. I really don't know. But I believe while we've been gone, you've been chatting about possibly coming on safari and who's been and who hasn't. And Becky in central New York State, I believe you're about to come out here, which is very exciting. You've been watching for a year and you've asked your first question. Well, thank you for doing that. And those of you perhaps who haven't asked questions before and are our regular viewers, please do ask questions. Give us your comments. We do love to hear from you. Our Kirkman's camp is currently run by Anne Beyond. She used to be known as... I'm going to talk to you once we're through the dip. Monkey! Nyalas, same story. Alright, sorry about that everybody. So Becky and Beyond I did my training, also run a lodge called Ngala just up the road from here, and I spent 5 years working for them there. So you should have a very good experience. And of course it's in the Sabi Sand, so your game experience should be exceptional, your hospitality should be exceptional, and I hope you have a great time. It's not too far from here, as the crow flies, probably about maybe 10 kilometers or so, but it is across the Sand River and quite a long way south on what used to be Mala Mala. Mala Mala then split slightly, and that's where Kirkman's is, in the southern end of Mala Mala, so really southern part of the Sabi. Have a great time. Very unusually hot. What do you think? About 36? And then I believe there was a question earlier, just on the theme of heat, about African elephants and Indian elephants, and why one have larger ears than the other. I'm going to quickly answer this, and then we're going to go across to Scott, who I believe is with the sleeping Birmingham boys. So they're not going anywhere. I think the reason that the African elephant has got much larger ears than the Indian, I think the temperature is pretty much the same in India and here. But the big difference is that the Indian elephant spends most of its time in the shade. They spend their time in jungle, in the forests, and so they don't have direct sun on them in the same way that African elephants do. And I think that's why the African elephant has that much bigger ear, because it obviously helps to cool the blood going to the brain, which is crucial out here if you're not standing in the shade. On that note, we're going to head across to the Birmingham boys, who also found the heat rather a bit much today, and I'll see you a little bit later.
Oh, what a beautiful sunset we're experiencing here. Some beautiful clouds, but not only that, some beautiful big male lions. And thankfully you haven't missed out too much since you've been away from us. And these guys, as you can see, are fast asleep. They're scattered about, and we will show you all four of them that we can see eventually. We're just going to let Jean-Andre take you on a little bit of a tour. And fear not, what we need to do is put on our patient pants and wait for them to start showing some signs of movements. And I am very confident that there's a strong chance that they are going to roar for us. I've never heard all five of them roaring from a close proximity, and I cannot wait. I think tonight is going to be a first for me, and possibly a first for a lot of you. It is one of the most awesome things that you can experience on safari, and if I could choose one thing, just one thing, that I could guarantee to show my guests on a safari, it would be this, male lions roaring. So I hope I'm not hyping too much, but they have been calling a lot at the moment. This morning we heard them roaring, and that's what helped us to get onto their tracks that took us on a wild chase through Djuma. But eventually James did a great job in finding them. But the bottom line is they are calling a lot at the moment, and the reason for their high vocal communication at the moment is because of the fact that they are in the process of trying to take over this territory from two bigger and older males. I just heard a rustle over to my side here, and we've got good news. Oh, look at that big yawn. Jean-Andre had to scoot you in at high speed there to try and capture that. And he's also just changed what is called an ND filter, and as the light begins to fade, he has to alter a few settings. And because this is a live safari, you are here to experience every little glitch along the way. Not that that's a glitch, but it is a little technical thing that you would not be used to seeing if you've only watched wildlife documentaries. Get ready for the screenshots. I'm going to get ready with my camera, because there's a strong chance he will continue to yawn. Thinking about it, is that a sneeze coming? I think that could be a sneeze on the way. Beautiful. What have you got in your mouth? Is it a piece of hair? Something that he's not happy with. I'm not too sure exactly what. And talking of pride takeovers or coalition takeovers, we just got a question through from Pretty Nightmare. And she's heard that in these times of conflict, if one coalition does the dirty to another, there's a strong chance that the business is not over and the coalition that may have lost out in a particular battle may come back to seek revenge. And that's entirely correct. The Matimba males, who are the two dominant males, who are larger than these individuals but not as numerous, are certainly not going to give up without a fight. And it's quite often in these scenarios that male lions can kill one another or wound one another fatally. And it usually doesn't just happen instantaneously. A lot of the initial debates and arguments will simply be vocal, but eventually something will give and a physical confrontation will unfold. So you're entirely correct, Pretty Nightmare. And who knows, we could be lucky enough to witness the spectacle. It's something that I've never seen, and it'll be an incredible show of power and strength between these incredible predators. It won't be easy to view, and I certainly won't be taking sides, and it's important for us to always remember that what goes on here is natural, and even though it can often be quite harsh and difficult to understand and witness, we are merely spectators, and it's up to these animals to sort out their own conflicts and debates. Speaking of conflict though, it's incredible how affectionate and caring they can be towards one another, the same coalition members. And these guys would have grown up together. They of slightly, ever so slightly different ages, and basically there's one that's the biggest, another three which are in between, and one that's slightly smaller. It's difficult to tell them apart, and even as they lie here, it's difficult to tell who's who. I'm still getting to know them again. I got to see them quite a lot over November, December, January, February, and then from about February, March, they started moving further north into the property called Buffelshoek to the north of us, and then even much further north into the Manuleti, where they spent a lot of time. So I'm still getting to know them again, and a lot of you will also be getting to know them, and I look forward to hearing your different ways of identifying these animals. Let's maybe take a closer look at the sunset. It's beginning to dip below the horizon, and it's lighting up some clouds quite beautifully. And while you take a look at that, I'm just going to be on the radio to Craig. He would like an update on what's going on here. You all know what Jandre just did now. He just changed the ND filter again. Craig, just myself here. They are still stationary. Same place. Beautiful, peaceful evening. Not too much bird song yet, but it could pick up a little bit later. I'm interested to see where these lions head. Possibly for a drink somewhere around the Waterhole. I haven't seen any buffalo in the immediate area, and that is their ultimate prey. They're not exceptionally hungry at the moment, but like most predators, any opportunity to cash in on another meal will be made the most of. And that would be another wonderful spectacle to behold in terms of their strength and power, not fighting with other males, but bringing down one of their dangerous and biggest quarries. I think they are seasoned veterans now at doing this, And especially at this time of the year, as the buffalo are quite weak due to not too much food being around, the going is good for them. Now, something else that we will be seeing if and when these 5 brothers do become dominant over this area is them mating. And it's, like I say, still probably going to be a while before the dust settles. There's a lot of turmoil and rage at the moment, and as they come into this area, they are initially actually going to aggravate the prides of lioness and kill some of them along the way, especially those lioness with cubs who they are trying to defend. And oh, one's just rolling over there. And Valerie's just sent through a question all the way from Ontario, and she would like to know if all of them will get to mate, or will only certain individuals of this coalition mate. And it's a great question, Valerie, because even though they're very affectionate and parts of the same team, when it comes to ladies, it's the biggest and the strongest out of these 5 that will be the lucky one. And they will fight amongst one another, not to the death, but they will every now and then need to re-establish who is dominance, and dominance will change. The biggest male could get injured or lose condition, and then the second in charge will decide that, hey, it's my turn to step up now, and maybe I can oust him in terms of mating, and that will happen. And what can also sometimes happen is, because 5 males banded together like this can acquire such a large territory, what they will need to do is actually split up into different groups, one of 2 and one of 3, and that way they can more effectively patrol their very large territory, making sure that no nomads and intruders are sneaking in, and also making sure that no females in season go undetected. And therefore we may have 2 different groups of the same coalition mating at any given time, and therefore 2 of them will mate. Now, that leads to another important discussion, and an interesting one, and that is, how will these males know that once they have split up, it is actually indeed their coalition partners who have fathered cubs from their surrounding prides? And that we do not know the answer to that question, but it is important that they do know, because if they are not sure of who has fathered certain cubs, they would come in and kill them. And in this case, it wouldn't make any sense for them to kill their own coalition's blood. Otherwise, there will be no cubs here for the next 5 to 8 years that they could be dominants. So that's just an interesting thing that male coalitions do understand, and we're not exactly sure how do they know that one of their partners in crime have mated and fathered cubs when they were nowhere to be seen. So there's 4 individuals that you've seen in front of us now, and I did touch on it briefly a little bit earlier that the 5th individual can't be seen, but as you can see, there's a small road, or a little road behind the individual that's lying down, and the other 5th member is just on the other side of the road behind some bushes, basically just to the left of the fallen down tree that you can see over there. And Jandre is going to be able to give you a faint blur of that line. So that's where the 5th one is. You can see its paw up in the sky. Well, earlier on I did say that the 2 dominant males currently dominant over this area, the 2 Matimba males, are bigger than all 5 of these individuals. And Mischian in Dallas is interested to know, how much bigger and how much do I think these animals weigh? It's a great question that I would love to be able to give you solid answers to, Mischian, but it's a very tricky one because I've never actually seen a male lion being weighed and therefore had one reference to work off. We can only work off the averages and books and also the speculations of other guides in this area. Now, chatting with some other guides, they believe that the Matimbas are very, very big, and I agree with them. They are two incredibly big males, considerably larger than these guys. James said last night that he says that the Matimbas have got 30 kilograms on these guys, which is about 60 pounds. And if I was to take a flying guess, I would say that the individuals that we're all looking at now roughly weigh about 150 to 160 kilograms, and the Matimbas closer to 190 or 200. But like I say, sadly, unless we were to weigh these animals, the weights of lion across Africa will vary greatly on the individual area and amongst the individual lion. Okay folks, well, as the lions are still all very much fast asleep, we are going to rush you over to James, who has found a beautiful, beautiful piece of Juma that he would like to share with you. I wish I was coming along to enjoy, but we're going to stay here with the lion and we'll see you all shortly.
Hello everybody, welcome to this absolutely magnificent scene here at Buffelshoek Dam. In the foreground, the water of the rapidly shrinking Waterhole, and of course in the background the magnificent African sun just about to set. And you can see as Viam changes the exposure, you can see the crepuscular rays sprawled out, starting off crimson and turning into a sort of creamed honey and lemon as they explode over the top of our heads. And those crepuscular rays, of course, are formed by the sun shining through the clouds at the angle that it is. So you wouldn't see them during the day necessarily, but they would be there, just not shining in an obvious fashion like they are now. Isn't that just the most wonderful scene? So I believe you were chatting about revenge and in lions, and William, you wanted to know if I thought maybe the orange-eyed lioness of the Nkahuma pride had put a hit out on me. William, that does rather presume that I'd done something nasty to her and therefore she was seeking revenge. So thankfully I don't believe that I have irritated her that much. I feel we have a bond, an understanding of pleasantness between us, and so I don't think revenge is necessary. Thank you, William, for pointing that out though. Just further on that, I don't think animals do take revenge. I'm sure that's what Scott said. Certainly animals do have memories though, and especially elephants. If you were to sort of, in an area where elephants have been harassed by people, they will absolutely remember that and have an experience of people that might not cause them to take revenge, but would certainly cause them to act in a manner that is, shall we say, less than friendly. Let's just go back to the sun. It's not too long before it actually dips down below. You can just see, I believe Scott said he thought that was a female hippo in here the other day. I'm not prepared to say either way at this stage, but we'll just modify Bob's name to Bobette if we eventually discover for certain that that is a female hippo. I think it's a male, probably because of the injuries on the back, which you won't be able to see from here. All right, so Scott is also, I think, looking at the sunset while he looks at the beautiful coalition of male lions that is the Birmingham boys, causing a huge amount of issue. And I'm sure their coats are shining gold in this wonderful light. And I mean, it is that we're in the height of the dry season now. I think it's going to get a lot drier in the next 30 to 60 days. I don't believe it's going to rain till November. And Rhonda in Kentucky, you say, will the Juma waterhole ever fill up? Rhonda, you will not believe the change that will take place here when the rains eventually come. This dam wall, in a year of good rains, would be almost covered to overflowing with water. I know that's almost impossible to imagine. And the Juma dam, indeed, I've seen pictures of it flowing into the overflows on both sides of the dam. Yeah, you can't believe how much water can be collected in this area. And so please keep watching. The other thing, of course, that you will notice as we watch that sun disappearing beautifully over the grey, sort of dry season vegetation, that will turn bright green, 100 different colors of green. The grass and the leaves will produce, especially come January. So November, the leaves will be on the trees, and then when we get the rain, the grass will turn green and start to grow, and come December, you just won't believe that we're looking at the same scene. The sun, of course, will also be setting much further to the left of your screen. That's to the south. And I'm just going to be very quiet now for the next little while we watch that sun sink and just have a listen to the wonderful sounds of the evening. It's just my favorite time of the day. You can hear some green spotted doves or emerald spotted wood doves. Toot, 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 toot. You can hear the francolins calling, crested barbet, some starlings, ring-necked doves. The air is beautifully fresh. There is a hint of knobthorn flower on the air. Gentle breeze from the northeast, and the rather massive heat of the day is starting to dissipate, along with that unbelievable crimson pink ball of exploding hydrogen nuclear fission reactions that provides us with the life, or provides us with the energy for life on our wonderful planet. And I hope Becky and others, I know that you've all been talking about coming out here, your experiences out here and your intentions to come out here. I hope that when you do come out here, you will be able to sit in complete silence and just absorb the atmosphere, the energy, and the amazing healing power of a quintessential African evening like the one we're having right now. Wasn't that just absolutely fantastic? All right, we're going to enjoy that sky a bit further, Liam and I, and while we're doing that, I'm going to send you back across to Scott so that you can look at the magnificent sky and a magnificent coalition of 5 golden male lions. We'll see you just now.
Welcome back, everyone, and I have no doubt that you enjoyed your time with James. The sitting and waiting continues, but slowly the lions are beginning to stretch out their legs and their toes and their paws, and these are all very good signs. Just like us as humans, it's sometimes not too easy to wake up and jump straight out of bed and be in full swing, and lions are no different. They will very gradually get up. Well, I'm not sure what the rest of you guys think in terms of when these guys might wake up, but Lynn way earlier on in the drive mentioned that her prediction is they'll get up 10 minutes before the end of drive, and judging from past experiences with the lion of this area, Lynn, you're probably not far off. Although I'm optimistic, and I feel that within the next 20 minutes we should start seeing considerable changes in their behavior, and by the end of the safari they would have vocalized 3 times. So that's what you have to look forward to in terms of my predictions. And Lynn, as much as I think you could be correct, I hope you are wrong about them only getting up 10 minutes before the end. Now, a big contributing factor to these lions becoming active will be the cooling temperature, and earlier on when the drive started it was 31 degrees Celsius, 88 degrees Fahrenheit, and it's dropped considerably to now 26 degrees Celsius, which is 80 degrees Fahrenheit. Very pleasant evening in terms of temperature. Jean-Andre did have his sleeves rolled up earlier, and they are now rolled back down, so he's not as hot as he was. Well, very happy to hear that Donna is feeling optimistic, and she's been keeping a close eye on the bellies of these lions, and she's noticed that they're fairly flat and therefore may be more inclined to be hunting this evening. And I think you spot on, Donna. Although I must mention, when a lion's stomach is how we can see it now, it's kind of perfectly flat, it's not indented. That means they are content, they are comfortably fed, they are not gorged, and they are certainly not starving. They're kind of in between. And an interesting story about these males from November, I know I have said it before, but it was an incredible sequence of events. They basically killed 3 buffalo within 48 hours. They killed one night and fed on it for the day. The following night they killed another one not far away and left one behind, the initial one that they had killed, and were feeding on the second adult buffalo the following afternoon after having killed it, and another herd of buffalo stumbled upon them, and they got up. By now they're incredibly full-bellied. They'd been feeding on buffalo for 48 hours, 2 different ones, and they still managed to bring down another buffalo calf. Not a tiny calf, a kind of medium-sized calf. So even when the predators are full-bellied, they can and will still take any opportunities that arise. But obviously the hungrier they become, the more inclined they will be to travel bigger distances in search of prey. There doesn't seem to be too much nearby, although one of the vehicles that did pop in briefly to show their guests these beautiful lions, they did mention that there were some impala and kudu not too far away. Kudu would be decent size prey for these boys, but because they are quite big and bulky, they tend to steer their attacks to big and bulky prey that isn't very fast and light-footed, that can escape easily. And both impala and kudu are quite nimble and agile, and it would be a very good hunt for them to manage to take one of those down in terms of skill, but their power and brawn allows them to take down much bigger prey that maybe lioness may find more difficult to hunt. So it's important to think about these things. Lioness are more seasoned at catching the smaller prey, and these guys certainly aim towards bigger, slower but more dangerous prey like the Cape buffalo. Well, hello Angie in Ohio, and all the kids that are watching alongside with you. It's great to know that you're watching again, and it always puts a smile on my face. Now, there's been a lot of interesting behavior with these male lions, and we are not entirely sure as to what the exact reason is for this behavior. But basically what's been happening is that the males, these males, have killed up to date 3 different lionesses. And usually for males, they would compete with the other males so that there's no competition for them and that they can have all the different prides of females. But in the process of them coming into this area and trying to win over these ladies, sometimes the ladies or the lioness will put up a fight. And I think the reason for me is that it's like if a stranger came up to you that you don't know, you're naturally not going to be very welcoming, and you're not going to allow them into your house to help themselves to your fridge and to your food, and you certainly aren't going to want them to kill your kids, which you've had with other males. So I think that's the reason. When these newcomers come in, they're strangers to the lioness, they don't have anything to really offer to the lioness, and that's why the lioness put up a fight against them. And sadly, because they are so much bigger than the lioness, who are often trying to defend their cubs from them, the lioness will get killed. And it's not the first time, it's not unique to these lions, so it doesn't make them bad lions. It's normal when young coalitions like them come through with lots of energy and lots of testosterone, and they get very, very excited. Sometimes they do things that don't really make sense, and one of those is killing lioness that do try and defend their cubs. So it's nice to sometimes put ourselves as humans into the feet or the paws of the animals to understand kind of why they may be doing the things that they do. But like I said, it's important for us to not dislike these animals simply because they are killing lioness. It happens throughout Africa whenever there are pride takeovers. And another important thing is not to become too attached to the little cubs, because a lot of the time, whether it's leopard cubs or lion cubs, they very often don't make it to adulthood. So it's best to try and love them as much as we can, but just remember in the back of your mind that there is a chance that when they are still small, that they are going to be killed, either by a male lion, or in the case of leopards, female leopards often lose their cubs to male leopards who are not the fathers of those cubs. Speaking of which, I'm not sure if James has told you, but the 3 Styx females and 1 Matimba male have been seen together at a place called Ingwe Mati to the south of us, and there was no sign of the little cub, the remaining young male. That's not to say that it's confirmed that he's dead, but there was no sign of him when they were seen this morning. So according to my predictions, there's 15 minutes until they start showing some signs of life. According to Lynn, it's still going to be another 35 minutes. But there are still 45 minutes left of the safari, and I would urge you to try and stay tuned in, because to see these males roaring is going to be a life-changing experience if it is something that you have not seen before. Now, on the topic of these males killing females as they maraud through this area, Cheryl in Illinois asks a good question, and she's interested to know whether we think it's possibly because there are too many females in this area that the males are killing them. And I certainly don't think that's the case. The more females there are, the more females will probably get killed through default, because they would all have possibly different cubs that they would try and defend from these males. But I really don't think it's because there's an overpopulation of females. And if anything in this area at the moment, it's quite the contrary. There's a lot of different male lions moving around. Now, I've lost track of all of them, but basically, let me try my best to run through it. There's these 5. There's the 2 Matimbas, that's 7. There's 4 Majingulanis, 11. There's 2 Styx males that are about 4.5, that's 13. There's 1 Incohuma male, who's quite big and old now, I'm told. I've never seen him, but also flies below the radar, more in the south of the Sabi Sands. I've lost count now, but I think that's 14. And then there's 4 Toulon males to the south of the Sabi Sands. And there's also the 4-way males. I'm not sure how many of them are there. So there's a lot of males in the south of the Sabi Sands that also buffer up to some areas that we don't quite get to. So there's a huge quantity of big male lions in the area, almost too many at the moment, and not enough females to go around. But that will all change, and there are these natural cycles, and it is normal. Oh, good news, we've got one of them that's put his head up. And yes, it's normal. Sometimes these coalition takeovers can wipe out entire prides, but once the dust settles, there will be a lot of mating and a lot of stability caused by 5 new dominant males that can actively protect and patrol their territory and the lioness and cubs within. And then we'll find a surge in population of the lioness and the prides. And I guess it kind of does make sense, because if the prides were just continuing to grow and grow and get bigger and bigger, there wouldn't be enough food to sustain them. So I guess when these males come through and deplete numbers of prides to a degree, it helps the prey animals' populations recover for a small period of time, and then get ready for the surge in the lion population. And it will ebb and flow, just like most things in life. The immediate thing that I thought of was my bank balance ebbing and flowing. But that is life, and even for us as humans, there's good moments and bad moments, and moments of plenty and moments of hardship. And it can't always be the good going, and you need those tough times. Not sure where all the birds are hiding, but they don't seem to be making too much noise right here. I'm not sure if the birds are calling across at Buffelshoek Waterhole with James, or if it's just something to do with the weather, or who knows what's causing them to be so still this evening. Well, thank you very much to Teresa for asking the question you did, because it brings up a very important discussion to touch on. And Teresa's asked, due to the depleting or lowering numbers of lioness in this area, which may continue, will other lioness move into the area? Most certainly. Whenever there is a void or a gap created in nature, it's often very quickly filled, and it may give that gap to a few young lioness trying to find their own territory. It may give them that gap to start up their own life here. And I'm sure it won't take long for lioness to fill the gaps if entire prides are wiped out. Or often what actually may happen is that prides do split up. And some of you may have heard of the Salala breakaway pride, also known as the Mangan pride, and that's a good example of how one pride that was together has split. Now, nobody knows why they've split or who makes the decision to split and when, but it does happen. And when a pride splits, naturally one pride will need to establish one territory, or probably keep one portion of the pride will keep the old core territory, and the pride that splits off will need to find a new area within which to live. So that certainly will happen, and we don't have to worry about not seeing lions. If the other lions do get killed, the gap will very quickly be filled, and it's quite simple. The lions all communicate with one another through vocalizations, through scent marks, and as soon as they realize there's a gap in the markets and there's free property with which they can go and extend their searches for hunting, and increase their likelihood of being able to be full-bellied and go to areas where there's always food, they're certainly going to not miss out on that opportunity, and they're going to try their best to acquire that territory quite quickly. And that means for interesting shifts in dynamics and exciting times that certainly do lie ahead. Well, now there's a few Franklin that you may hear calling off in the distance. Good to see this lion stretching. Good signs that I spoke of earlier, of them slowly beginning to wake up. Well, thank you so much to all of the viewers who are sending through questions, and if we haven't answered yours, I apologize. And if you are one of the viewers who don't send questions, we're going to find out who you are and reprimand you for not getting involved. Anyway, a big thanks now to Sharon in Pittsburgh, who's sent through another question on the topic of this takeover and the interesting behavior that we're experiencing. And she would like to know why these lions have not fed on the lioness that they've killed. And in most textbooks, especially the older ones, Sharon, it was written that predators will not kill other predators that they've killed. They simply do it for competition purposes. Or in this case, it's not direct competition, it's more because of the takeover and slightly other complicated reasons of which we're not entirely sure, but most likely because the lioness are trying their we've got a question now that a lot of you are interested in. Just to name a few, Lisa, Mauricia and Jimelin are all wondering if the Sabi Sands did any tests on the lioness that was killed from the Inkahuma Pride, and they certainly did do tests, but they haven't published anything yet, and maybe whatever tests they did do on that lioness are still in the process of being worked out. So sadly, we haven't heard anything yet, but as soon as we do, we'll be sure to let you know if anything interesting did come out of whatever tests they did do on that lioness. Now, we are going to stay here. We would never leave after investing all this time with them this afternoon, so don't worry, we're not going anywhere, but you guys are. We're going to send you for an update with James, and hopefully you guys can help him find something interesting. Keep looking up in the trees, maybe you'll see the leopard, the silhouettes of a leopard, and that's something to think about. And we've just got a question through from Khada saying, wouldn't it be nice if a breeding herd of elephants walked down the road and woke these guys up? I couldn't agree more, Khada, that would be great. Anyway, if that does happen while you're gone, we'll be sure to rush you back, but for the time being, enjoy continuing the search with James wherever he is.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Jiga. A brief respite from the sleeping lions. We're here at Treehouse Waterhole, where we just disturbed a saddle-billed stork who has flown off in, well, a bit of irritation, I suppose, at being disturbed. He has been fossicking around for some sort of small fish. And as you can see, in the water here behind me, the catfish are again starting to experience what they have in Gari Dam, and also of course in Twin Dust Bowl, where the water has become extremely shallow, and so it's very easy for the little ones to be caught, and the bigger ones of course are too big for things like that stork to be catching. Viam is just hand lighting me there with a torch that is brighter than a neutron star, and so I probably will not be able to see for the next week or so. I picked a little bush, and this is called Manilkara murchisa, or the low-felt milkberry. It's my favorite little tree out here, and it's an evergreen. And I was trying desperately to find some kind of sign of spring, this being the 1st of spring, 1st of September, and I couldn't find anything out here at the moment. I did see one beautiful combretum tree in full leaf earlier today, which was wonderful. And of course then there was the knobthorn just near our camp that is starting to fill the air around our camp with the subtle sweet smell, which is just wonderful. Okay, that's all I have to tell you about Treehouse Waterhole. Nothing seems to be down here drinking, but you can see in the mud around here there has been plenty of activity from mainly buffalo who have been lying in the mud. And of course that's an excellent way to cool down on a very hot day like we've had today. Right, let me try and not fall off. The dam wall here, everybody, is slightly precarious, but fear not, I've managed to get in even with my extensive injuries. My fortitude has run through, so Lady Macbeth, you'll be pleased to know that despite my severe injuries, I'm still in fact functioning at almost 80%. Right, on we go. Hoping desperately to see if we won't spot a leopard perhaps, and I will now retrieve the spotlight. Now, in case none of you know this, we do not shine on diurnal animals, so should we drive past an impala, I will not shine on it. Lovely question from Ohio. Name I'm just struggling to get. You want to know why it is it Ginny? I think it's Ginny. Cinny, C-I-N-N-Y, or perhaps Kinney. My sister had a friend called Kinney. Anyway, you would like to know why it is that spring starts here on the 1st of September and not on the 20th when your autumn starts. I don't know. I don't think there is actually an official date, to be honest. I just know that this is known as Spring Day in South Africa. So I couldn't really tell you why it's different from where you are in Ohio. I think your September is still quite pleasantly warm, isn't it, in the Northern Hemisphere? I don't think it gets cold until October, unless I'm much mistaken. Of course, by the end of September, especially if there's been no rain, we go into what's called in Botswana suicide month. And that's because it is so hot and so dry. And the clouds build, and rather like politicians promise a huge amount and then they disappear without giving us anything at all. And that will probably be the case until November. So the spotlight I will use to try and find the reflective eyes of the Tapetum lucidum. Say that when you've just woken up, Biam. Tapetum lucidum, and that's a reflective sort of film in the eye of most animals. We don't have one, so our eyes don't reflect at night, and it does help animals to see at night, nocturnal animals especially. And so you will see the flash of eyes. That's basically what we look for when we shine the spotlight like this. And the reason we don't shine on the diurnal animals is that we don't want to put them at some sort of disadvantage. The nocturnal animals are going to be awake anyway, so to disturb them a little bit with the light doesn't tend to do any harm. Ideally, of course, one day when the thermal imaging is such that we can still recreate color at night with an infrared camera or a thermal imaging camera, then that's what we'll use. But at the moment, those infrared cameras put out a sort of nauseating green color, which is not very pleasant to watch. Rest assured, we are going to go down that road one day. The other thing, and I think Scott was talking about it last night, that we will be looking for is chameleons. And you won't believe the spotting of chameleons when you do see it. It'll look to you like it's magic. When in actual fact it's pretty easy to do. Now we've got a bit of an unusual situation here in the Sabi Sands with some of the lions, and I know we've been talking about lions all day, and I think we're going to continue to talk about them probably for the next few weeks. Mauricia, you want to know if a breakaway pride joins up with its sort of original pride members, will there be a friendly greeting or an angry and aggressive greeting? Well, Mauricia, normally it will be entirely amicable. There won't be fights. Certainly that's what's happened with the Styx Pride meeting up again, except for the fact that it seems like, except for the fact that the males killed one of those Styx females, so that's very unusual. Yeah, I've definitely never seen any aggression with it, but it's also not that common. These breakaway pride situations that we have here with the Styx Pride, and then the Tsalala Pride, which broke into the Tsalala Pride, and of course it's now called the Mangan Pride further south of here, which is now 17 lions. That's not common, you know. In all my years of guiding full time, I never saw a pride break up. So it seems to be all the rage in the Sabi Sands at the moment. If you happen to be in a pride, then you break up into a number of breakaways. There's no reason for there to be aggression. I did see a duiker there, eyes shining, but we won't shine on them at enough of a disadvantage as it is. Sky is now turning from that beautiful pink to purple, and eventually it'll go inky black. And I don't think there'll be great stars tonight because there'll be quite a strong moon later on, and also there's lots of dust and smoke in the air. That's why we had such an incredible sunset. So some very nice little comments and updates there from John Q and Lisa, who said, Lisa, you said that it is autumn day in the UK, and John Q, you said it was meteorological fall in the northern hemisphere. So in Ohio, the 20th of September is possibly a little bit late for you to be starting your autumn. Cinny or Kinney. And as Chris and Rita say, as we head towards the warmth of the summer, dung beetles and chameleons will be something that we're hopefully going to see more of, but dung beetles only mainly when the rain comes. They are currently under the ground, eating their way out of their little dung balls where they have wintered and then pupated, and then they will come out, I hope fairly soon after the rains start. But I think we will see very few of them before we get a decent dry splashing rain. I keep seeing the lights on the horizon there, the settlements on the western edge of the Kruger Park, thinking that they might be a bush baby sitting in a tree, but they aren't, obviously. I'm heading back towards where those tracks were of the lions early this morning, hoping that they won't perhaps pop out of the bush, on the off chance that they weren't actually the Birmingham lions that we were following earlier. So Cindy in North Carolina, just before we nip back to Scott, I believe that you did touch, or you asked a question about the giraffe and why it is that they are not part of the Big Five. Well, it's a very good question. It does have a very definite answer, and the answer is that the Big Five were considered the 5 most dangerous animals to hunt. A giraffe will tend not to respond with anything other than abject terror and running away if you try and hunt it. But the buffalo, the lion, the leopard, the rhino and the elephant, when they are threatened sufficiently, will turn around and the hunter quite swiftly becomes the hunted. That's why they're called the Big Five. It is a hunting term, and that is why I almost completely refuse to use the term. I use the term high profile game, and that would include things like hippo and wild dog and cheetah and all the other iconic animals that Africa's famous for. And I suppose you could include the giraffe in that if you wanted to. So we'll head back across to Scott, see how the Birmingham boys are doing. They've had a very lazy day, and I don't think that they're having a particularly active night at this stage. But let's go across and see them, and I'll see you a little bit later.
Welcome back. Sadly, no changes here. And it looks like Lynn may even be wrong with her predictions of them getting up 10 minutes before the end of drive. Because at the moment it's not looking promising at all. But that could change quite quickly. And we very often get surprised by the animals, and hopefully this evening will be no different. And in their defense, they are moving huge distances at night, and they've been very, very busy over the last few weeks. And it is normal behavior for lions and most cats to sleep for 18 to 20 hours every day. So even when they do wake up tonight and do start moving, there's probably a strong chance that at some point in this evening they'll take a 2 or 3 hour doze, depending on what happens. I'm really interested to know where they're going to move from here. It's impossible to guess where. Will they head back south towards where the Matimba males are? Or will they head north away from us into Buffelshoek, where they have been spending a lot of time over the last few months? Time will tell, and sadly we may not be able to find out this information this evening, and it may be on the Sun's Safari tomorrow that we have to follow their massive prints, establish where they've gone. Hopefully tomorrow they won't take us on such a roundabout trip that they take us on today. But that is all part of the adventure. And if every drive was the same, it wouldn't be exciting. And even on this morning's drive, as a lot of time racing around looking for them, we did stop along the way and have some interesting sights of other animals. And it's often the efforts on tracking down the way, enjoy all the other beauty that does exist here. If you listen carefully, you'll be able to hear the African scops owl calling every not like that, but that's at least.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Giga. Sorry about that. Scott is in a very difficult area, and I think you probably heard VM playing the trumpet there, and I'm sorry about that too. He's quite a musical fellow, old VM, and he's clearly full of the joys of spring, and therefore trumpeting away merrily, oblivious to the fact that he was doing it to the world and not just to himself and me. So Scott is in a difficult area. He's in the same area where earlier we had to go black screen, and so I'm sorry about that. It just is an awkward part of the reserve. Well, Anne, you've asked the question, why do lion prides break away? And it's a good question, Anne. And Virginia, I think you've answered it perfectly well. You said because they get too big to feed everybody, and I think that that's precisely what it is. I think that there's an enormous amount. Lion pride sizes tend to depend very strongly. There's no, completely 100% one dependent variable, but they do tend to depend quite strongly on predator numbers, at least on prey numbers and prey abundance. But also male upheavals in an area like the Sabi Sands is definitely having an effect. There's no shortage of prey here, and the fact that the Styx pride broke up into 3 groups of 2 doesn't make any sense to me, because, well, not from a prey abundance point of view. Hunting lions, they've shown in various parts that 2 lionesses are less efficient than 3 and less efficient than 1. So 2 lionesses in a pride is a really bad sort of number of lions to be in a pride. So I think that the fact that they've split up quite a lot in the Sabi Sands may well have to do with, perhaps it's got to do with prey, perhaps it's got to do with the size of the prey. So, I mean, the impala are the most abundant antelope here, and they were probably the largest number of kills that are made here of our impala. And we don't see them all the time, of course, because they do get devoured quite quickly. And maybe that central area where the Styx pride are, there just weren't enough big buffalo herds, and that's why they split up. That's possible, Virginia and Anne. It's also possible that the upheavals with male lions all over the place are also creating a bit of an issue, and that's why some of the prides are breaking up. But I couldn't give you a definitive answer. I suspect it's got to do with both of those things. There's a scrub hare there that just leapt 4 feet into the air. I don't know why it did that, but it shot up like it had been shocked. Look at it running. Notice, Viam? Not a bunny, it's not hopping, it is running. And that, of course, is the big difference between a bunny or a rabbit and a hare. But interestingly also, I mean, they have that rather, shall we say, less than humane sport, coursing, where you'd send a greyhound or something like that after a hare and bet on whether it would catch it or not. But it is interesting to watch how, if you ever do watch that, then what happens is that coursing motion of a dog chasing a hare is a wonderful analogy for how a cheetah and a wild dog catches their prey. They course very nicely. Right, we're going to try and nip across to Scott with the lions and see how his signal's doing. If it's not doing so well, I'm afraid you'll be back with me and possibly a scrub hare or 2. But let's see how the lions are doing, and I'll see you just now.
A little bit better, which is great, and it's also giving you this wonderful view, which is a little bit different from what we've seen so far this afternoon. And it's going to be interesting to see how many more scratches and scars next few.
You're back again. Sorry about that. This time Viam wasn't trumpeting away, so that's a good thing. We are nearly, well, maybe it is depending on your love of brass instruments. We are now, we've done pretty much 50% of the block where we thought those lion tracks disappeared into today, and nothing as yet. So it's all still rather a mystery as to what's going on. Daryl in London, while we drive around on this balmy, wonderful first of spring evening, you'd like to know what we're going to show you heading into summer, what other sort of different kinds of animals. Daryl, I don't think that the suite of animals is going to change, because nothing, of course, is hibernates for too long out here. They do a bit of estivation, which is the equivalent of hibernation, but done for dryness rather than cold. But Daryl, what we will see at night especially is more things like snakes hunting in the trees. Sometimes we get vine snakes and tree snakes, which is quite fun to see. And then chameleons, of course. And then because the nights are a bit warmer and we're out after dark, sometimes a bit longer, we might see things like civets. And we see civet tracks all over the roads every morning. But I've never seen a civet here at Djuma. We might see the odd genet, which tend to be around. But the actual suite of animals will only increase in the cold-blooded animals. So things like, I suppose, chameleons and snakes and would be the obvious ones. And of course, frogs. When the rain comes, we'll get frogs and toads, quite a lot of. And then there will be some birds that come in that we wouldn't see normally during the winter. Something like a square-tailed nightjar, which we don't see during the winter time. But otherwise, same suite of animals, very different bush. Thanks for that, Daryl. There is an eye shining on the ground. That's a nightjar there. A nightjar just flew off the ground. Almost impossible to film, I'm afraid. So very entertaining for me and not necessarily for you. It is such a lovely warm evening. As opposed to a hot evening, which is what we'll have in summer quite a lot of. Tim, do you see any lions? No. Could you look harder, please?
You notice the darkness?
Yes, I have noticed the darkness. I've also noticed your slightly sardonic wit. There is a duiker, which I'm not going to shine on for too long, disappearing into the darkness. I would quite like to see the Nkahuma Pride fairly soon, mainly because I want to see how young Junior is doing and to compare his size to those of the Birmingham boys. I suspect that as an offspring of the Matimbas, he is actually going to be slightly larger than those Birmingham fellows. Sarah, on the subject of the Nkahumas, you want to know, has anyone seen them? And the answer is, well, no, not for a while. I think that they're on Djuma. We saw them 2 days ago around here. Then they seemed to disappear into a block yesterday and we failed to find them. Then they seemed to, we don't know where they went from there. We didn't find their tracks this morning because we were out trying to find the Birmingham male lions. So I think, Sarah, that they're on Djuma somewhere. And hopefully tomorrow morning we'll be lucky and we'll find them. Thanks for that, Sarah, in Ohio, aged just 17 years. Always asked good questions. So thank you everybody for your patience during our rather tough time with some of the signal issues today. It has been a fascinating day. There's so many questions about the lions and you've asked so many good ones about them, so thank you very much for your contributions on that front. Big thank you to Viam on the camera today, and a big thank you to Nikki and Tara, the old hands in the final control. We will see you tomorrow morning. I'm going to hand you back to Scott for a last look at those magnificent Birmingham boys, and I'll see you on the Dawn Safari. Thank you and good night.
And looked off to the east Oh, nice big yawn. Another one. Just hard to say what it is that they did here, but they could well have heard either lion or possibly alarm calls, but obviously nothing too serious. And their hearing is much better than ours. So how far away it is that they did hear. I was hoping it was going to induce them to roar. And don't worry, I'm just as disappointed as I'm sure lots of you are. Close to the day that happens. And even though we haven't been
Hello everybody. Your eyes do not deceive you. It is not in fact the dawn safari yet. It's still the night safari. You haven't lost an entire 8 hours or 9 or 10 hours of your life. I'm afraid the signal is just too appalling where Scott happens to be. I'm just going to turn off road here and we'll have a quick scan of the clearing. And what you'll notice, I'm going to scan gently across like that, and you'll just see the odd impala that is now lurking in the clearing. Ooh, sorry about that, Ben. So we'll answer a couple of questions and just hope that maybe we'll get those lions back before the end of the drive, but I'm afraid I don't think that's going to happen. And we are not very far from the Birmingham boys. They're over in that direction, probably about 1.5 kilometers as the crow flies. And then, Christy, you want to know how far they are from the Gowrie Dam. The Birmingham boys are, not far, probably about 800 meters on the road and about 300 meters or 400 meters as the crow flies. All right, everybody, I'm afraid that's it for the 1st of spring. Once again, a big thank you to you, and it does remain for me to now close for Scott and to say thank you very much to him, and of course to Jean-Dre, and I look forward to you seeing Jean-Dre again. He has lost his beard and is totally unrecognizable. So thank you again for your patience, and thank you for your time, and I'm just going to let you enjoy the sounds of the wonderful 1st of spring for the next 10 seconds. We'll see you in the morning. Bye-bye, and keep safe wherever you are in the world.